Well, good morning, favorite sister.
Oh, don't say that. Emily's not here. And if she hears it, we'll be in trouble.
I know, right? I thought that
I
was
know.
funny. I thought that was funny because I was like, oh, Emily's not able to be here today, but that's okay. So I'll say JJ's my favorite sister.
Will you say that if I'm not on, will you tell her that she's your favorite sister?
Never. Of course,
You're
Louise, of
so
course I would.
lying.
I
Yeah,
am
you're so
such a
lying.
middle sister. I'm playing both sides.
Yeah,
Both
whatever. Just
sides.
just just
Good
move on because
morning.
we've got an amazing guest today.
Oh
Just move
man,
on.
don't
We're not
we?
talking about us today. I know.
No, we're not talking about us today. We always
I
talk about
know.
us.
Thankfully.
I'm so excited about our guest, though. And you know what? She's ahead of us. Not that she's older, but she's ahead of us. She's in the UK, which is magical. She's crossed the pond,
I know she
literally.
doesn't have the southern accent.
No, she does not have a Southern accent.
I've got a northern accent.
Oh, she's got a
Oh,
northern.
My northeast accent.
oh, that's
Oh, listen
nice.
to that. Listen to that. That is straight up. For everyone in the US, we're like, it's just from somewhere else, not the United States, which we love. We're like, is she from New Zealand or Australia? We're all like, that's the same. We are so excited to have Louise Thompson. Oh my gosh, she is total sister, Jay.
I know.
She is a
She
sister.
could be your favorite sister.
Honestly,
Louise,
I don't like to play favorites, but
Louise is now your
Louise
favorite. Just
is
just
now
let
my
me.
favorite
I'm just
sister.
going to tell you about Louise,
Why
and
don't you tell
obviously
us?
she's now Natalie's favorite sister. So this is obviously my last podcast, Louise, and we're just going to let you be the new podcast person. So, all right, let me tell you guys about Louise because she truly is amazing and she is a sister at heart right off the bat. Louise Thompson is let me tell you, a seasoned corporate professional. She is a wife, a nana to Millie, a published author. She is a speaker, including a TEDx talk. She is an author of several publications. She has a law degree and she is an accredited mediator. And I'm gonna go ahead and make the assumption here that little of that prepared her for life as a caregiver of two parents with dementia. Louise is an open book, though, which is what's so amazing about her. She talks about how caregiving jeopardized her health, her marriage, her work, and even her driver's license.
Mm.
She also realized after her father's passing the trauma of those years and resentment and guilt, all ongoing life lessons as she continues to care for her mother. What came from all this, though, is My Folks, and that's a company named in tribute to her parents. And we can't wait to share more about that. But Louise, we are so excited that you're here, and we can't wait to just hear about everything because you're an open book, which is what we love. Like,
We love that.
yeah.
I've got tissues ready because I don't know
Oh
how
my
this,
gosh. I
this is
love
going to
that.
go. It's therapy for me.
Oh, I love it.
It's great to talk to you. But
Oh,
yeah, I was not prepared. I don't think anybody is prepared. I don't think you can imagine it until you're in it. So if we can, in having these chats, help somebody else who's currently going through it, because it is isolating, you can feel alone, and you don't know that others have gone there before. So hopefully we can help a bit.
mm, I love
So
that.
both of your parents were diagnosed basically with dementia, but tell me about you're living your life. We'll just kind of jump because there's so much to your story. You're
We always
living
like to say you were
yeah,
born and then jump forward.
we jump forward, but
Yeah.
you are successful career, you're married, and you have for 30 years lived over 300 miles. Is that right? 300 miles from your parents. And so your dad, what happens there? How does this start and unfold?
So my dad started to develop vascular dementia.
Mhm.
And up in the Northeast, small town, and there is still a huge stigma attached to having dementia. Not everywhere, maybe more my parents' generation, but they were quite embarrassed and ashamed of the dementia diagnosis, and they were trying to hide it. And they didn't want my dad to go into a care home. They were really, really fighting very hard against that. In hindsight, should I have collaborated so much with that intent? I don't know, but at the time we did. We tried to enable dad to stay home for a long time, and he did. He stayed at home, right up until he was admitted to hospital when he passed away. But they were trying to keep him at home, and they weren't strong enough. Neither of them were strong enough to keep him at home. So whilst they thought they were being independent and in denial about dementia, they were actually leaning on my brother and me, my brother's fabulous and amazing wife, who was definitely a true sister in every sense. They were leaning on us in ways that were probably unreasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And we just went with it. We didn't think it was all that unreasonable. It was difficult. It was challenging. We didn't think it was unfair. I know that had they been well, they would have thought it was unfair, but they weren't at that stage by then. They were just quite desperate. And so we did everything we could, which meant my meal times could be interrupted. It meant, sleep could be interrupted because you get the phone calls, could you just, or there's this disaster and that's gone wrong. And it was really traumatic for both of them. And I look back at how scared they were. They'd been, married together all of their adult lives, and it was being taken apart. And they were so scared. And, you look back and you think that was the biggest problem of any other problem that was experienced, how scared they were of losing each other and losing their grip on reality. That was terrifying for them.
That hurts. I want to understand a little bit. Your mom and dad, so you guys are from the north. You are living in Londonish. Like
Londonish, yeah.
Londonish.
Yeah.
And it's the same way in the States. Like we're like, it could be 5 counties. It doesn't really matter. Like you're living in somewhere in London. And so they're living up north. And how your parents are retired, right? How old are they?
Early 80s, both of them.
Oh, so they're early 80s before your dad's diagnosed, right? Okay. And so they've been retired for some time. What did your parents do by profession, if you don't mind me asking?
Not at all. My dad was a joiner by trade, and he'd worked his way up to be a site manager and then a clerk of the work. So he would inspect buildings. Mm-hmm. And my mum was an auxiliary nurse. So neither of them were professional in any way, but they made some choices. They moved to a bungalow because they thought my dad wouldn't manage the stairs. And then after a while, and I think probably this was the start of dementia, he started to worry about the roof, and he would be obsessing that if anything happened to him, that bungalow was going to need a new roof, and how would my mum cope with that? So they moved again into a flat that had a warden. The warden would look after the outside areas, the communal areas, but within the flat, they had a pull cord to pull for assistance. And somebody would, come in on the intercom and say, "Are you all right? Do you need any help?" And that we all thought that would see them through. That would be all that they would need in terms of additional support. But it proved to be ineffective.
So that's interesting, because I'm trying to make sure that we understand for our U.S. folks, like, so were they in what was an equivalent of an assisted living where there was somebody that was always available? Like when you say they had a pull cord that they could to reach out to somebody, was there someone on the property who was available to support them at some level all the time?
No, there was somebody who worked 9 to 5. And she was responsible for the communal areas. And she did, she'd keep an eye out on them, but it wasn't her job to provide any emotional support or any care. And I could see that, 10 of the flats in this complex were all starting to, can you just help with this? And can you just help with that? And she couldn't get involved because then she wouldn't do the day job of making sure the communal areas were clean and light and things like that. That was her job. Yeah. So it was a conflict, really.
So it sounds, Jay, like more like an independent living.
Yeah, more like even just an apartment community, Natalie. So even like that. So nothing where they could, go in, make sure there's food or anything like that. So they're on their own basically, and they can call if they've got a leak or something. But nothing much more than that. Fixed. Toilet, yeah, exactly. Gotcha. So nothing much more than that.
And even that would have been private.
Oh, so the communal areas are the outdoor areas. So anything on the outside. So it sounds like an HOA, Jay.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So they're on their own. You're over 300 miles away, and your dad is progressing. So they're both in their 80s. And so tell me about your dad, a little bit about his progression, because he does, he declines over 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. And he, at some points, he knew that he was declining, and he would say, "What's happening to me?"
Mm.
And I couldn't say the word dementia to him. And I would say, "Well, Dad, the blood isn't getting to your head as well as it used to. And that's what's causing some of this confusion. But don't worry, we've got you. We're here and we'll look after you." And he would, okay. He'd understand.
No, I'm sorry. Does your brother live close by?
To them, yes, he did. He was doing, long shifts. Also, married, relationship, has children that don't live with him, so has to spend time with them too.
Mm-hmm.
So we would try to share looking after them. So I would, if he couldn't be there for a weekend, I would try and make sure I was there to cover. I would try and do admin from here. I would throw some money at it from here, whereas he was the one who would more often have to pop in and do whatever it is they needed doing. And here I have to mention my sister-in-law, my fabulous sister-in-law. She did things for my parents that she probably never did for her babies. She was literally hands-on. She was amazing, and we couldn't have done it without her.
So if you don't mind me asking, like, what kind of things would she do to supplement for you and your brother?
In some ways, it was easier for her to do some of the personal care than it was for us. I so didn't want to see my dad naked. So I know some families are fine with it, but our family was not like that. Our family was quite straight-laced, quite reserved. And I had managed, my mum had had a stroke many years before, and I'd managed to help her in the shower and things, but I really did not want to see my dad naked. And I knew that he would not want me to see him naked.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it was easier for my sister-in-law to be involved, just that little bit of different. I mean, it was amazing that she did it. And,
I can understand that too, Louise. And I think it's respect for your dad. And what you just said is, if your dad was of his right mind still, he wouldn't want that. And it is very respectful. And I think about my own father, and I know that he would have never wanted that either. So that's a hard thing to cross. So that is an amazing sister-in-law.
I even think about, excuse me, our dad was 6'3". I don't know that physically any one of us besides Emily, our youngest sister, is 6'1", would be able to almost physically lift him to be able, even if you were fine with it, there's such limitations around trying to help transfer people. I think there's also that.
But you guys are doing that, which is just amazing to me. So I'm kind of interested in, you say you're getting, when we talked about this originally, you're getting all kinds of phone calls though. And I'm assuming this progresses and you're trying to work. You're also trying to be married, which, it's just amazing. People still have lives as caregivers. You are at times, multiple times during the week, making this 300-mile commute. So tell me about that, how this starts to really, and I don't want to say take over your life, but it does, Louise, after a certain point in time.
It absolutely did. It absolutely did. I can remember one instance. So I was working in one county. I was living in another county, maybe 50, 60 miles apart. And then my parents, they live up north. And I called that, it became to be my triangle of hell. And it really was hell. And I didn't feel like I was doing right by anybody, that I wasn't present for any of them. And an example that sticks quite strongly in my mind is I got a phone call while I was at work to say that Dad had gone aggressive. Turns out that when you get dementia, you can also sometimes get delirium. They're not the same thing. Often it's a sign of an infection, but the confusion escalates, and there's paranoia and things like that. And my mum's terrified. So I'm going to reach him. I'm going to be the one that is, there is a special dad and daughter relationship. I did think I could get through in ways that other people couldn't, maybe. And I remember running out of work. So something's come, I've got to go, and just running to get in the car. I start to drive, then I get a flat tire. And with the flat tire, then the AA, we have the AA, rescue service that you pay for, comes out and then says, well, we haven't got that tire. We'll have to tow you to a garage. And I need to go. It's a 5-hour journey. I'm not started yet, the horror. So we eventually, hours later, I'm now driving up the motorway. And I'm trying to compensate for work. I'm trying to do conference calls on the way. I'm trying to rearrange my diary, trying not to make too big a deal of it, because you don't want to be letting people down, and you don't want them to, to have any excuse to think, well, you're not pulling your weight around here.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to look like I was all over it at work. Then there's a husband now who's, not going to have me home for dinner. He's not going to have any dinner potentially. And so I'm, talking to him, I'm really, really sorry. I've just got to go to Newcastle. I'm sure I'll be back tomorrow, and, we'll be fine. And, can you just unload that washing that I put in? Because I thought I'd be back to do all of those things. And so then I'd get there, and the problems weren't huge often. They just needed a person. So, does he need some antibiotics? There's a water infection, get some hydration in. But mainly it's about the reassurance and holding his hand. And he did get quite aggressive with my mum. So she was scared. And I could just diffuse some of that tension. So it was, thinking about it now, that stress. And you talked about the fact that I nearly lost my driving license, and I so nearly did. We had many contraflow systems. I don't know if you get that in the States, where one lane of the motorway is closed, and so so you're restricted in speed and it's monitored. And I would just drift. I'd be in at 50 miles an hour, limited to 50 miles an hour, and I'd just drift in these conversations, thinking about what I do when I'm up there, just being tired. And I got repeatedly, a fine for doing something like 56 in the 50, 53 in the 50. And I built up a number of, I think, citations, you'd probably call them, until I got to 12 points. And at 12 points, it should be a ban. We should be banned from driving for, a considerable time. And so I had to go before a magistrate and explain myself. And that was humiliating, embarrassing. It was frightening because, again, we were using company cars for these journeys, which I was entitled to do, but they don't want you to be committing offences while you're doing it.
Yeah.
I didn't be committing an offence. Law degree, it's not me, ever. But to have to go and, be called into the magistrates was one of the worst experiences in my life, easily. And it was horrible. The magistrates were understanding. They didn't ban me. They very much could have done. And I was certainly told one more, and you will lose your license, undoubtedly. It didn't become necessary. It wasn't tested because my dad passed away. So I stopped doing the drives. And also we had lockdown, actually, which meant that we weren't allowed to go hurtling about the country. And that was a bit of a relief for me, that the law says I can't travel.
Isn't that interesting? The silver lining of the pandemic. I mean, honestly, it was a curse for our mom and a blessing at the same time, because we can't do certain things, which was a problem. Yeah. And it's interesting that I like it. I like how you're saying it really was. You're like, you couldn't go up and down. But what does that create for you guys, you and your brother? I have to ask, are you older or your brother?
I'm older. I'm 3 years older.
I assumed you were the oldest. I assumed you were in charge. And but so, I know that you also said, and this is very true, it shows to the level of exhaustion that you're feeling in kind of your caregiver story that you had shared with us, is that there were times that you would get tired and potentially doze off as you're driving. And because you said it's a 5-hour drive. That's that's 5 hours each way. I'm like, that's 10 hours of your life that you won't get back, and you're trying to get up there. But you said you dozed off?
And on the coming off the motorway onto the quiet road, so I've nearly made it home. I'm nearly home, and it might be 2 a.m, 3 a.m. I'm going to be back in time to start work at 9 tomorrow. Great, I'm going to get some sleep. And the one time I really remember is the car had just stopped, and that's what woke me up, because my foot had come off the accelerator. But what if my foot had gone onto the accelerator?
Wow.
I really remember that time. And that's why I say what they were asking was unreasonable. what I was doing was unreasonable. But we hadn't planned for it. We didn't expect this was going to happen. And so I didn't know that I was behaving in a way that was very irrational, in a way that was very unfair and unreasonable on people who depend on me. Probably unreasonable and unfair to my parents as well, because I was trying to do stuff that was still not enough for them. They wouldn't have food in the house and things like that, and we were trying to make it survivable, but it wasn't really survivable. So falling asleep at the wheel. My husband worried sick about me, and to him, I wasn't listening.
Wow.
Because I couldn't listen. I couldn't listen. It had to be done.
It sounds like in your mind, though, and I've been there, where you're just in a state of panic for yourself, just trying to please everybody. Was there a breaking point for you, Louise, where you were like, I'm angry about this. This is my situation. And why is this the hand I was dealt? Did you ever get to that point where you emotionally broke down, either because you're exhausted or you just are just so frustrated?
Wanting to give your pink slip. I'm done.
I'm quitting.
Because I can tell you, there's a couple of times I walked out and I'm like, I'm going to show everybody. I'm just going to walk out and leave. And then I come back.
I did. I probably took it out more on my mum than anybody else. We probably always had a bit of a more of a strange relationship. The old adult, we maybe butted heads a bit. I took it out more on her, and I feel guilty about that. But she and I would argue, and she something you said earlier about me being in charge. She would say, "Don't talk to me like I'm your staff."
I'm pointing towards my husband because Jason has said to me forever, do not talk to me like I'm staff. And I'm like, well, don't act like it. Pull it together.
Yeah, because she was, and I think back now, the day of my dad's funeral, I sort of said, right, well, I've got to go now. And you're leaving tonight. You're going now. We've just cremated your dad. But there was, conference, something big. I've got to go. And I kind of thought, well, it's been 2 weeks. And before that, he was in the hospital. So you used to go into bed on your own. But I do look back now. So did I check? I had arguments with her. We had fights. But I look back now and I think that was a pretty terrible thing that I did then. That I left her on the day the day we cremated him. I left her. So I don't think I ever really raged against why is this happening. Maybe I probably should have. It would have been more healthy. But I still have guilt. I still had guilt hugely up until you, Natalie, gave me the gift of some relief of that. When I contacted you and I said, I think I'm a reluctant caregiver. I was reluctant. And you said, well, we all are. I said, okay. Because back to the, seeing people, I hear people who are putting catheters in their dad and things like that. And I think, God, they're doing that so much better than me. I don't know how they do that. So I didn't want to do it. And I felt so bad. I didn't want to stay, the day that we buried my dad and we cremated my dad. I didn't want to stay. So I have guilt more than rage.
Well, but I'll say this, Louise, I encourage you not to be hard on yourself, because there's a reason that you chose not to stay. And it had nothing to do with love for your mom. It had everything to do with probably wanting to get away from the situation, probably wanting to just run and just to get away from it, to escape, because it's so overwhelming, death and dying anyway. But when you have all that strain and all that it's like a crescendo, and you're like, there are times that I would just want to get away and hide. And I would just go and just make believe in Trader Joe's and make friends with everybody. I talk to everybody. My husband tells me that I'm a candidate. I'm just walking around a candidate to be killed because I talk to everybody. And I'm like, that's because I just dissociate. I'm just like, hey, how are you doing? Want to be my best friend? And so, because there's some days that are really hard. And I think I hear you in saying, I can't believe I left my mom, but I'm going to say, I can totally believe you left your
Well,
mom.
now for me, Louise, I can do things like that sometimes, but for me, that's self-preservation.
It
Like
is.
I get to that. For me, that's oh my gosh, I have to get out of this situation or else I'm going to break. Like that's a little self-preservation for me. So, but you guys, you got out of that situation. I know your father passed, but then you had a realization that the situation had taken a toll on your mom. And she also, because did you realize she had dementia while your father was alive, or was it only after your father passed?
There was only a diagnosis after he passed. There
Oh,
was there were strange things, but everything just seemed so strange. So the pair of them would call the police because there was somebody in the house, in the flat. So they were saying somebody had got in through the main doors downstairs and come in the lift and got to their apartment and come into their locked, they were obsessive about locking the door. So it was really unlikely, but they rang the police because they could see the people in their flat, both of them. And so she, she really believed that, and she would often say she could hear a baby crying. Oh, that baby, it was crying all night, and there wasn't a bit. We did some practical things. So we fitted a doorbell so we could see who was coming and going. So we sort of knew. There was an instance of money going missing. It was £300, which was a lot to my parents, and it went missing when my dad was still. It was very near the end, and it went missing, and they accused everybody, and everybody kind of felt it wasn't me. We by that time there were carers coming in, external carers coming in. Could it have happened? Well, the money's not there anymore. So there was that irrationality, but we didn't really think it was dementia. We might have thought it was just the pressure of the situation. But very quickly after he went, and it was in lockdown, and there is a bit of me that was relieved. I didn't have to keep going. The law said I couldn't go, and she was alone in her flat, and I think that was the end of for her. Really, she is so far away. She's still alive. She's in a care home now. All the things that she fought so hard not to have my dad in a care home, and we've got her in a care home. But she is, they're great. They're better. She's better cared for there than either of us could have done. And I look back and I think she was so scared of being alone. It wasn't the best for my dad. It was in some ways what was best for her. So it was complicated.
Hey, ladies, I need to interrupt for just a second to share about the Sisterhood membership. It's basically a sale every day. And the best part, it's free. Here's the details. We're partnering with our friends at Benefit Hub and other care partners to save you money. With over 200,000 participating companies across the US and abroad, you'll find discounts at your favorite local stores, huge savings on vacations, amazing deals on home, auto, and supplemental insurances, and everything in between. Go to confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com to sign up, and then definitely tell your friends about it. They can join too. Trust me, there's a discount for everyone. And don't forget, it's free. Okay, back to confessing.
Yeah, but you know what? This is kind of an odd question, maybe, or I don't know whether you've thought about it or not. Do you wish that looking back now, maybe you had said to both of them, maybe we should go to an assisted living or a skilled nursing, what we call that, for both of your parents or for your dad? Because is it that big a difference for the situation, Louise? Would it have been better, do you think?
It would. I think there were times when she was at the end of her tether and she would be, telling him off. She was, worried that he would exhibit the dementia in front of people and they would guess. So she controlled him very, very, and he had dementia, so he didn't understand why this person was being, so controlling of him and so on his case, really. So yes, I absolutely think that I wish we'd done that differently. Where where Mum is now is that they're awesome. They're really, really kind. It's not the most fabulous decor or anything like that, but she feels very safe there. And that he would have liked the company, he would have liked the attention. So yeah, my biggest regret is that I didn't take a stronger line with that. That I just went with their wishes. But what I'd probably say, if I had my time all over again, is make a plan. You should absolutely, whilst everybody is well and in control, you should have a plan. And the plan needs to go to the worst case. We had some plans. We had, for example, power of attorney so that we could take over their affairs. My background, I really wanted that power. I knew the importance of it. They didn't want to sign it until the time was right because they didn't want to lose their independence. And by the time, well, it never did get signed, which meant that I had to go through the courts to apply for deputyship, which literally took years, a lot of money, and was very difficult to administer things in the interim. So I would say make a plan, get your parents to consider that, unfortunately something will happen to them. It's inevitable. Make sure that you've got your plans in place and make sure those plans go to the worst case scenario, and then put them away and get on with having a great time and forget about the fact that you've done it. We have I'm on my pedestal at the moment, my high horse. We have life insurance. You wouldn't think of not having life insurance, probably wouldn't think of not having a will. Why would you not think about putting this plan in place? And it's because people don't want to confront their own mortality, obviously, but it is so much kinder for everybody if you have a plan and take it to the worst case scenario.
I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. You mentioned that you started having carers come in, people come in. At what point did you all make that decision? Like you and your brother sit down and talk about it? You and your parents with your brother sit down and talk about that, to have strangers, quote unquote, come into the home?
No, it would have been a hospital admission. I don't remember the hospital admission in particular. There were lots, and that would be some of the things that would have me, hairing up the road. He's being admitted to hospital for something or other. And hospitals with dementia were terrifying places. So to digress just a second, I remember one time I got up there, collected my mum, got up there, and he was being escorted from X-ray by 2 security officers, and he was raving. And he was being escorted because he was disruptive. Now, again, you could hear my law-abidingness. My dad is totally law-abiding. He would never want to be in that situation. He would never cause anybody any trouble. If he was being treated in a hospital, he was incredibly grateful. But he didn't know that he was in hospital. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know why he was being manhandled into a room and into a bed. And so he was anxious. And when he saw me, he was like, oh, thank God. He knew it was me. Sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't. In that instance, he knew, and he was just distraught. So those are the sorts of examples. Yeah. So if he was, things like that, just, I think we were talking about plans, weren't we? I've lost my thread slightly, and I digress slightly to talk about the hospital experience is so bad when you've got dementia. Yeah. I felt I had to be there, and I was trying to make sure that they didn't keep him in, and I didn't have power of attorney. They said, "Have you got power of attorney?" No, but we're going to take him home anyway. And I did, fight as carers. I did fight them to say, look, he's, one time he'd fallen and banged his head, so they wanted to keep him for observation because he was behaving a bit strangely. It's like, that's what he does. He behaves a bit strangely. It's fine. We'll take it. I'll take responsibility. I'm taking him home. He will be better. He will settle better at home than he will here. So yeah.
That's just your advocacy.
Yeah, advocacy. Really, really, I was going to be his voice. Absolutely. Yeah. And so the carers were arranged by them probably. And we were grateful because, again, it would have been disloyal for us to have that conversation. But for the hospital to say, no, it's needed. You
Yeah.
really need to have that. So they'd come in early in the morning, they'd come in late at night, a couple of times in the day, but only sort of 15 minutes. That was provided. I think they had to pay for it, but it was organised by the NHS.
Yeah.
And that they thought they would never want somebody strange in their home, but actually there came a time when it was essential. It had to happen.
So I want to talk a little bit about what came of all this, Louise, because there were times when you drove that 5 hours and then you drove the 5 hours back, that there were little things, or even when you didn't have to make the drive, that you were like, if I had someone to help me. I want you to tell me about the remote control, but other times when what this experience taught you and what you've turned it into.
Okay. There's a lot there, and I'll go off.
Okay.
You might have to bring me back.
That's okay.
So the remote controls used to be every evening that I was driving home from one county to the other, finished work, going back home, and I'd get a call saying, we can't get the TV on. TV's broken. That would be what the call was. TV's broken. And we don't know who to ring. And, it was really important to both of them that my dad had his football to watch. We realised he couldn't follow the score. He didn't know who the teams were. But maybe just the noise or the screen of a football game was familiar to him, and that was really important. And it was a crisis. It was an absolute emergency if he couldn't get the football on. Well, he couldn't, but my mum was trying to get the football on for him. And so I'm like, okay, TV's not broken. We just need to get it on the right channel for you. And so I'd be driving along trying to picture the remote control. Okay, so let's start, because by this time I don't know what buttons they've pressed. So I'm like, okay, press back up. And then which one's back up? Well, it's quite an oblong button. It's in the middle of trying to picture it. And the red one, no, not the red one. And so, okay, what did you say it was? Is it TV guide? No, it's backup. Backup? Yes, backup. It's in about the middle, oblong button. And we'd go through this, and the frustration on both sides was huge. And my mum was scared that she wouldn't be able to do it, and then he wouldn't have the football, and then he'd, maybe say he was going out or something. So it was to tether him, not literally, but emotionally, into the house, to keep him occupied and interested and focused. Maybe gave her a bit of a break as well. So we would try this many nights, and then when I'd exhausted it and we still didn't have sometimes it worked and we could get the TV on before I even got around the M25, and sometimes it didn't. And so then I'd have to ring my brother and say, oh no, you just got in from work, but can you go round? And it was 25 minutes there each way for him, 25 minutes each way. Little cost of a toll road that he had to go through. So did he have the cash? Because then it was just cash. Did he have the cash? Don't have to go to the shop and get some change, and just difficult when his wife's just dished up dinner and he hasn't seen her all day, and just disruptive. Can you just? So I'd then say to him, I hate to ask, but can you just go and put the TV on for them? And then sometimes he'd do that. He'd get home, and then there'd be he's fallen or whatever, and they'd just have to go back again. Happened, too many times to count.
Yeah.
So you asked me, how did we come through and from this? And there was one time I had got up there late at night. I'd slept on their sofa, and then in the middle of the night, there's a lot of me, and their little sofa wasn't cutting it. So I get off the sofa, pull the cushions off onto the floor, and I'd sleep on the sofa cushions. And really, really uncomfortable. Really, none of it. Their clock was ticking. It was driving me. Their clock ticking, driving me mad, and knowing that I had a meeting or whatever the next day. So I'm lying there, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm awake, and I'm thinking, I did think something has got to change. We can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
And so I Googled to find the sort of thing that I was doing, which was kind of practical, kind of emotional. It wasn't personal care, but it was regular. It was short but regular interactions with them to fix something. They might have not had any food. That was a regular one. They suddenly, we'd send up food, we'd do food shop deliveries for them, but suddenly they've got no food, or they can't put a meal together, or they just didn't want to use the cooker, actually, is one thing that started to happen. So I Googled anyway, 5 o'clock in the morning. I Googled for somebody to help. And what I found was people who there were some voluntary organisations, and you could book between the hours of 8:30 and 12, 3 days a week. You could ring them up and book something for next week. But I didn't need something for next week. I needed something now. I needed it at the point where there was something going wrong. And I really wanted to be able to just get my phone under my desk in a meeting and go, can somebody go and help? Can somebody go and see what is wrong? And I would have gladly paid for it, because the petrol money that I was spending going up and down, it wasn't a monetary thing for me. It was somebody who was caring, somebody who was compassionate, who we could trust, who would go when we needed them, which could be 10 at night. It could be anytime through the night. It could be 3 times in one day. It could be 3 times in the week. And I couldn't find that service. So I created it.
I love this. I love when you
watch it. I created it.
Very solution focused. I love that part. Solution focused. Like, if it's not there, fill the gap.
Well, I needed it. And I'm actually part of many support groups, of other people who are in the same position. I mentioned, there are daughters putting in catheters and things who are doing this so much better than I am. But it's agony. On some of the Facebook groups that I'm in, you just see a line, I can't do this anymore, and things like that. People are really, really struggling with this. So I had the idea, because I couldn't find that immediate responsive help. Had the idea, got on an accelerator while my dad was still alive. And then when we lost him in COVID, we stopped it. But after COVID, there were so many more stories of the pressures on health and social care. And I just thought, I know a solution here, so I've just got to do it. So we developed the app, which is called My Folks. And we developed a community of people who maybe were out of work because they've reached an age where, you just kind of get that message that, no longer wanted in the workforce, or they've never had a job. Care leavers, we've talked about care leavers who've never had a relationship with elderly people. Maybe people who want to be in a caring profession can do this as experience. It's really, really flexible. People can log on and say, okay, I'm available for an assignment now. I'm available for a visit. And they will go and see somebody in the local community who needs that visit. So it is a really, really symbiotic relationship. Mm-hmm. It's giving some purpose to the My Folks, as we call them, who provide the service. And it's companionship, it's reassurance, and it takes away that fear that I talked about in the beginning. That's the worst of it. Take away the fear.
Yeah, I think fear is such a driver for us, and it creates so many health related issues, because fear, when you feel fearful, you can't get through to the reasoning part of your brain. You can't see the solution, because you're paralyzed, literally the phrase paralyzed by fear. And when you live in a constant state of fear, it's going to impact your ability to be successful on a daily basis, whether it's showering or cooking or getting from a point A to point B, because you're fearful. Our mom was fearful.
Right.
100%. She was absolutely fearful before we ended up ultimately having to put her in assisted living, because she was fearful of who was going to come stay with her that night if she didn't have someone. She was fearful of how is she going to get her groceries, and fearful. And so I think fear is such a driving factor. And it sounds like my folks it's we don't want to say it's Uber, but it sounds like on demand response for help is what it is. On demand. And their background checks and all that.
Compassion. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Similar to that, but with extra compassion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you right now. Yeah. So it's not a car, but but those individuals, it's on demand care. And it's just as simple as that.
It's on demand support, because
it is.
For it to be care, there is a few more steps that we need to go through. So we don't offer personal care, and I need to be
understood. Okay, because that's a US term.
Compassionate concierge.
Oh, compassionate concierge. I like that.
We love that.
I do love
Louise,
some compassion.
I think Natalie and I were so drawn to this because the concept is so beautiful. And I have to tell you, we cannot wait. We're like, go Louise. We're like, we want you to spread across the world. So we know right now you are just in areas of the UK, but we know that eventually you're going to
She's going to come to the US.
She's going to be in Canada, but she's going to be in the US.
New Zealand,
she's coming.
Australia.
So everybody keep their eyes open. But it is just such a beautiful idea. And I love that it was born out of what the need was, because there definitely is a need. And again, it is compassion. It is care. It is care in the sense of it's just an emotional, I just want to help someone. It's that kind of just a general, that type of care. It's not a licensing care. It's just,
it's not a regulatory.
Yeah,
it is. I want to help you.
It's just being a human being.
Yeah. Kindness. It's really
it's kindness.
Strangers become neighbors. So that's my answer. I love it. Well, and now it's time for sister questions. We love sister questions. Emily's going to be so sad that she missed this because she doesn't know about the fourth sister who happens to be blonde. Yes. So that's clearly Louise and I look a lot alike. And so, Jay, what is your sister question?
Okay. I just need one incident where, because I've done this before, going to mom or stepping out of work because there's been a 911, she's got an emergency, or I've had to go to her house. And when I've gotten there, I've been like, really? I had to stop everything I was doing for this, for these. Is there one incident you can think of where it was like, really? I had to stop everything I was doing for this?
The one that springs to mind, so there was hundreds of them, but the one that springs to mind is actually not my story, it's somebody else's.
Yeah.
But it's such a good one. It's somebody who has a really powerful job.
Mm-hmm.
She's a single mom, she's got young children, and she'd been at her mum's house all day doing things for her mum. And then she got home and she was making dinner for the kids, and she gets a call. Could you just come back? Been there all day. What do you need? Can't get the lid off the jam.
Well, that's an emergency.
I don't know if some of it is the fear. Some of it is there's nothing wrong with the jam and they don't need the jam, but they need the person because they're scared. So what excuse can they find? Yeah, we used to find this when I was leaving. My mum, I'd say, right, I've got to go now. I've really got to go. And then she said, well, there was this letter. And she waits until you're almost out the door. And then, there's this letter. Is there? And what I sometimes do is say, give me the letter. Goes in my bag. I look at it when I get home. And then 3 months later, I'd find the letter. Because it was a tactic to make you stay longer, because that's what they really want. They want the reassurance of the person. She didn't get the letter. The people who wrote the letter, I don't even know what the letter was. And 3 months later, I'd find it at the bottom of my bag.
That's awesome. Thank you.
That's hilarious. That I'm going to say this. We didn't get to talk about your husband. And I know we're close to being out of time. And so I'm not going to ask, but I just want to recognize your husband for being a saint, because I know that it was a strain on your relationship.
It was. I would say he wasn't a saint. I might even say he wasn't a saint. He's just passing by at the moment. But it wasn't what we planned. It wasn't what we envisaged. We had a busy life, and it was difficult. It was so difficult. He hadn't signed up for that. I hadn't signed up for that particularly. He felt that I'd checked out. I was unavailable to him, and I was emotionally, I was unavailable to him. I wanted him to understand that all of my attention had to be with the people who needed me most. It wasn't a question of who did I love the most. It was a question of who needed me the most. But for 20 years, we'd needed each other, and then I wasn't there. So yeah,
that's interesting. If I'm okay to ask, did you all have to have any counseling to kind of reconnect, or what did you guys do to reconnect if you were passing? Because it sounds like you guys were passing.
We were absolutely passing. It was time. We didn't. Anybody who knew my husband would think he would be pretty horrified at the thought of counselling. What we did was we cycled, actually. He was already middle-aged man in Lycra. And I joined in as a way to spend some time together. I also was getting into the awareness that you need to be healthy. I did not want dementia. I still don't want dementia, and it still might happen. So we are both trying to do things to stave that off and make sure our health span matches our lifespan. And so cycling. So I said, can you get me a bike? And he was like, yeah, get me a bike. And we ride together, and we love to go on bike rides together. And we do.
I love that.
That's where we we get to wherever the point is. So yesterday, we stopped cycling. We each ate a pear sitting in the sunshine on a park bench before we cycled back home. That's all we needed. We just needed that time with each other. But I nearly lost it. I'm gonna close this here, because I'm so glad. Normally I ask about, well, I'm still gonna ask.
Ask it.
60 seconds. Louise, what is your favorite guilty pleasure? The thing that you do just for you?
Chocolate.
Most of us we're like chocolate.
Chocolate.
A flavor of chocolate.
Any dark chocolate?
No, I like the cheap stuff. It's probably just sugar. Sugar. So give me chocolate and give me football. Because, I come from a strong footballing family.
I see that.
My football and my chocolate are that's not because I need to be healthy. It's not because it's the right thing. It's not because somebody wants it. It's just for me.
I love that.
That's awesome.
You know what? We are so privileged to have had Louise, our new sister. She's been our sister for a while. It's just that everybody didn't know that we were sisters. And so happy to have you on here. And everybody, keep your eyes open for My Folks. It is launching formally in certain parts of the UK October 1st. And so we're really excited about that. And we will make sure all the information about My Folks and Louise's contact information is in our show notes. And so you'll be able to get in touch with her and find it. And Louise, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. And thank you for doing the work that you're doing, because it is really important.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
All right, everybody, until we confess again, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.